So here's why your weight fluctuates and why you should be okay with it, and not to get disheartened when it happens, irrespective of kind of what you've done in terms of kind of leading up to the increases, and especially if you're trying to kind of actively exercise more, kind of eat the right diet and get yourself kind of get your weight coming down. So the way to look at your weight is, rather than just one number, is to look at it in kind of terms of buckets. So we've got a number of buckets that essentially hold weight in it in our body. And I'm just going to kind of use 5 here, and then we could split them up even more, but I'm kind of going to use the main 5 here. So the first one we're going to look at is water. So your water weight can fluctuate. The reason why is it's obviously dependent, let's say, on how much fluid we're eating. Now, there's an interesting thing with water, is that the more fluid we take, generally there's an inverse correlation with then water retention. So the more fluid we take, the more actually we flush out of our body, and we seem to actually lose water the more we drink, or the more fluids we drink. But that's not the only thing, is your carbohydrate intake also, because carbs are stored only with water in our muscles. So if your carbohydrate level goes up or goes down, your water weight can fluctuate up and down as well. Salt is a big one. Now, when we kind of look at this is looking at hydration, and if we look at things like diurolite and stuff like that, which is essentially salts, our salt level from our diet will influence how much water our cells can actually take in. So when someone is optimally hydrated, their cells are very easily able to open up and allow water in, essentially. When we're looking at it, let's say, when we think about hydration, we think about athletes mainly, do you know what I mean? Kind of, not cramping and that kind of thing. But essentially they have to get their salt balance absolutely spot on, so that all their cells can kind of, have the optimum amount of water in them. So again, our salt intake, which is obviously kind of reflected in terms of our diet. There is sleep, because sleep affects hormones, stress, because stress affects hormones, and exercise as well. So one of the things when I mention hormones here, rather than going too deep into, hormones are kind of like signals to your cells, essentially, and tell them what to do. So when we get optimal amount of sleep, our body's able to produce optimal amount of hormones, and then again, they're able to tell our cells in our body what to do. And again, part of that is an exchange of fluid. So really, when we think about kind of water, we've got to look at kind of, it's fluid in the body. Exercise as well. Like if I do a set of squats, or kind of loads and loads and loads of squats, more than likely my muscles in my legs are going to kind of swell up with water, because I'm using them so much. So the water and the fluid in the body is going to be sent there, along with blood, etc., and that kind of thing. Which kind of leads me on to the next one of blood. So your blood volume can change. Now, both male and female, especially female, blood volume changes a lot, but kind of linking in then to exercise. So again, when we exercise, we do increase our blood volume. Your body kind of pumps more blood around the body and is trying to send it to thing. Now, let's say if we take the extreme side of things with exercise, is there's a drug known as EPO, or it's essentially a hormone, but synthetic drug, which essentially helps us build more red blood cells. Essentially, our volume of our blood goes up, and if our volume of our blood goes up, it means we can perform better. So there's which is actually, we produce the most amount of EPO when we're asleep, which again, kind of kicking into hormones kind of side of things as well. Muscle is another bucket. In terms of muscle, lots of things. Again, a lot of these will interlink with each other now. So as we're saying, it's kind of water, because we store carbohydrate with water in our muscle. Exercise. So again, if the type of exercise we do will stimulate how much carbohydrate we might want to store back into our muscles, again, which will influence our kind of water intake or water retention. Carbohydrate. If we eat a very low carb diet, our bodies will essentially use the carbs stored in our muscles and get rid of them, and won't replenish them if we're on a low carb diet. So therefore our it influences our weight again. We store, well, not necessarily store fat and muscles, but there are fat cells in and around our muscles. If you think of, like a ribeye steak, which would be a kind of quite a fatty steak, but there's fat in and around the muscle. Again, it's largely kind of our muscles as well have that. Sleep affects our muscles, again, going through hormones. Same with stress. Again, they can all influence how much muscle is not going to be on our body, how much your body is going to how much muscle your body may or may not hold on to. Food. So we're talking about, let's say, obviously the bulk of the food that we eat in. So as soon as I eat a meal, if I hop on the scales after that meal, I'm going to weigh more because I put more weight in my body. But also then in our digestion, kind of, if our body is sluggish in our digestion, isn't able to get that food passing through, we may have a lot of food kind of sitting there, which again will impact our weight. But also then kind of our bowel movements is kind of how efficient are they? Again, kind of going back to the scales. If we have a bowel movement, we'll weigh less than what we did beforehand. And again, water kind of will influence this in terms of digestion and that kind of thing as well. And then, so obviously I've gone through 4 buckets and I haven't mentioned fat yet. Now, the kind of reason I've done this is because when we hop on the scales, sometimes we think that the fact that they haven't changed, they may have gone up or whatever, we immediately kind of associate, okay, I've gained weight, which is bad because it's fat. But as I kind of shown there, is all of those can influence your weight by, easily 500 grams / more. Some a little bit less, but some kind of could be an awful lot more. So, if your scales go up by a pound or down by a pound or whatever like that, it doesn't necessarily mean it's all fat. And especially if it's gone up and you're actively trying to lose weight or trying to change your shape and lose fat, it's probably not fat. Now, the biggest thing as well, what will happen with people is if they have something like a takeaway or whatever, they'll hop on the scales the next day. And again, it'll be up or, it won't have changed from the previous week. But that kind of takeaway is going to contain a hell of a lot more salt, which is probably full of carbohydrate, which means it's going to cause an awful lot of water retention. Again, which will kind of kick into the muscle side of things. Again, it's food, it's digestion, probably not the easiest thing for the body to break down, stodgy food and that kind of thing. So there's 3 buckets out of the 5 that will be impacted by a takeaway. So again, if those buckets are kind of getting filled from a takeaway, it's not just the fat. Now, in order to gain weight from fat, in order to gain just a pure weight from fat, obviously we've got to eat more and essentially create a calorie surplus. Now, on a kind of 24-hour period, to gain 1 pound of fat, we'd need to eat 3,500 calories on top of what we'd normally eat to store 1 pound of fat. However, again, no matter how big your takeaway is, it's not 3,500 calories, or at least I hope not. So the other things again that influence fat storage in our diet is also in our fat cells is water as well. It all comes down to fluid. Again, they're all interchangeable, but our fat cells also hold water in them as well. So the big thing to kind of focus on is that if the scales are fluctuating, it's normal, because look at the amount of things I've listed here that are so variable in our days and in our weeks, that your weight will fluctuate up and down. And a really good thing to do is weigh yourself actually daily, or at least kind of 5 out of every 7 days, and kind of get an average weight over that period of time, as opposed to just judging from a Sunday morning to a Sunday morning or whatever like that. Your average weight over that period may actually be less than the drop you've seen from one Sunday to one Sunday. Especially if you're kind of actively kind of trying to lose weight and kind of work on it. But people typically with a weekend, they have higher calories on the weekend, they're a little bit lax on their diets, and then Monday morning's weight or whatever like that goes up compared to the Friday, but you can't compare the Monday to the Friday. But if you're taking, as I said, that average weight over time, it's a much better way to judge progress. because the beauty about doing that and weighing yourself on a daily basis as well is you see the fluctuations and you kind of get okay with them, rather than hopping on the scales and thinking it's the end of, you know, you've ruined your diet, what's the point, you know, kind of giving up, getting frustrated and that kind of thing, because you've no kind of actual idea what that change in weight or lack of change in weight may dictate. The scale staying the same may mean you've lost water and lost fat, but you've gained muscle and your blood volume is up or something like that, but it's just stayed the exact same. So as I said, don't judge kind of individual scale measurements and that kind of thing, especially kind of with weight loss. It is a journey. It takes a long time. There are times when the scales won't budge at all, and there's other times where they'll go faster. And again, the idea is just to be as consistent as possible with it, to see that kind of a set average weight start to drop down and tick down. So if you have any questions on this, do let me know.